And I don't say African Americans. Please understand something. I don't condemn Africans. I don't criticize Africans. But I don't know anything about Africa. I've never been to Africa. I don't know the streets. I don't have any cousins. I don't know any friends. I know nothing about Africa. I was born, bred, raised right here in America. I am 100% American, and I am nothing else. I'm okay with that. You don't need to call me an African American. I don't need the prefix put on the front of who I am, because now you're trying to take away from my Americanism. So that's how I am. You may be different. That's fine. You want to chase your heritage in Africa? That's fine. I chase mine here in America because I see America from a different perspective now. I understand the importance of America, how great America is. That's why people are running here.
I see so many African Americans saying they are not Africans on the internet. My brothers and sisters, you are West Africans. I see most of you claiming that before the first ship of slaves came in, you had already existed in America. That is not true. Do not be lied to. Africa is the beginning of everything. The first creation of human being was done in Africa. The reason why Africa is so blessed is because the Creator provided for the human beings in Africa. Before the continental drift, Africa is the mother. African brothers and sisters, we do understand that you do not want to be associated with slave trade, but it's your history. You cannot undo what happened in the past. What matters is where we are going.
Hello, my wonderful people. Welcome back to my channel, and thank you for always tuning in. And if you're new, kindly consider subscribing for more trending stories. So as you know, identity is a very powerful thing because it shapes how we see ourselves, how we connect with others, and even how history remembers us. But when it comes to Black Americans, there's a big debate. Are they African? Well, some say yes, it's in the root, it's in the history, the DNA, while others, they completely reject that identity. And today we are diving into that discussion. So let's hear what people are saying first.
You know what? I'm sick of y'all telling us that we from Africa. I'm really sick and tired. I keep bringing up these receipts of Native American indigenous hair texture right here. Check it out. You can say we from Africa all you want, but the truth is we was living in America. You understand?
I'm always going to be known as a Black American. I can't call myself an African American because when they want to separate us, then they say we are African American. But remember this: when I'm competing in the Olympics, I didn't compete on an African American Olympic team. I competed on an American Olympic team. So don't separate me when you want to separate me.
I really challenge the people that are obsessed with erasing the African heritage and histories of African Americans to ask themselves why. Why is it so important for you to take the tiniest sliver of information and start piecing it together just so that you can claim to not be African? Meanwhile, all the other information and evidence and stories and histories are readily available right in front of you that you don't have to chase, that you don't have to try to stitch together to legitimize your thoughts or narrative. Why is it so important for you to take these tiniest threads? It's like grasping at straws at this point just to say you're not African. Why?
Because right now in America, we have a ridiculous dialogue going on because there's some reactionary self-hating Africans who are trying to convince other American Africans that they don't come from Africa, that they were already in America. They're positing that America, the American continent, was a cradle of civilization. Mind you, no scientific research at all backs this theory up. Okay.
Even Europeans can't dispute.
It's indisputable. The Chinese just came out last month. One of the top geneticists in China who now stated that their first ancestor in China was an African, and every Chinese carries the DNA. The East Indians have already done this. Mexicans have done it. So you mean to tell me the people in the diaspora who look the most like the African American, you have nothing to do with Africa genetically? It's ridiculous.
What do you consider yourself today? Are you American? Are you African? Are you African American? What are you?
I'm an African raised in America. You know, clearly.
So you're not American?
I wish I was, but my mind is not African. I mean, American. It's clearly African.
But you have the accent, you have,
I went to school in America.
Most African Americans don't like to be called Africans. I tried to understand this in some of my studies, and I discovered that a lot of African Americans believe that Africa is a zoo. They believe that Africa is a forest. In other words, there are no houses, no roads, and no buildings in Africa. I don't know where they get this information from. But you see, we are all blacks, and there's no need trying to separate an African from an African American.
I am not an African American. I don't have an afro. I have an Amerifro. See, Amerifro. There are no African drums beating in my chest. The American guitar is playing in my heart. As black as the ace of spades, my mother dropped me in Alabama on a plantation. I was born on a plantation, grew up under the Jim Crow laws, but 100% American.
Some Black Americans feel deeply connected to Africa, whether through history or culture. Others feel no connection at all and believe their lineage is rooted elsewhere. And then we have Africans themselves, many of whom say without question that Black Americans are Africans, their ancestors came from Africa and that history proves it. But here is where it gets even more interesting. Some Black Americans argue that Africa doesn't even feel like home because they've never been there, they don't even know the culture. Meanwhile, some Africans feel like Black Americans are long-lost family who just needs to reconnect. Anyway, what I can say is, at the end of the day, Black Americans are the ones who know their own history, their roots, and their identity better than anyone else. And their experiences shape who they are, and no one can define that for them. And actually, there's a guy in this last clip who explains the history behind this conversation. Let's take a look and listen to what he has to say.
People. When we say the term African American, which is a term that was popularized in 1988 by Jesse Jackson. Jesse Jackson and the Boule and the Congressional Black Caucus had a press conference at a hotel in Chicago at the behest of the white Democratic Party. And they said, Black Americans now want to be labeled African Americans because we want to be grounded in a motherland. And they started to promote the term African American. They did this not to give us a cultural relevance because we already had a cultural relevance here. This is our culture. What they wanted to do was make us comparable to immigrants. So an African American is no different from a Hispanic American, which is no different from an Arab American, which is no different from a Chinese American. So the narrative becomes all of you minority groups contributed to the greatness of America.
Right.
So when we give something to Black people, let's give it to all minorities because you're all equal.
Right.
That was a trick bag. And they do that right now. Whenever we start talking about reparations, which we deserve, we're claiming our specific lineage. No disrespect to anybody else.
Right.
But we have a unique lineage as people who descended from the slaves who built this country, who were the foundation of this country.
Right.
No other group. Other groups left their homeland to come here to benefit off of what foundational Black Americans built.
Well, this is a conversation with deep roots and everyone has their own way of seeing it. So what do you all think? Is it about history, culture, or personal identity? Let's talk about it in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more trending conversations. See you in the next one. Bye.